Hi guys, we are live. It is Monday Tech Tip Talk, and we got a little bit of swatch going on here, and waiting for you guys to get on, and for Christina to show up. Hi, good morning. Hello. Hi, Christina.
Oh, I turned my volume up because I couldn't hear you, and then when I joined, it was like crazy
Ah!
loud. Oh, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. It's hot here today, and it's going to be even hotter tomorrow, and it's hotter than it was yesterday, and
It's summer, it's July.
hot. Yeah, it's super hot.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am Sarah Walworth. I'm a knitting tech editor.
I'm knitting tech editor. My name's Christina McGrath. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Wow, lots of people showing up. Hi, Josephine. Hi, Goody Two Sticks. Edie Ekman. Hi. Thanks for joining us. Wow, the big names showing up. We are super happy to have you here with us today. Today is going to be our last tech tip talk for the summer.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking a break for August from social media and from some other things to plan for our upcoming school year. It's my last year to homeschool. So this is our last one for summer, and we'll regroup sometime early September. So today, what are we talking about?
Today, we are talking about how we approach our tech editing craft,
Mhm.
how we foster our relationships with our clients, and why you might hire a tech editor, the difference, maybe why you would hire a tester, tech editing, what
Mhm.
are the benefits of both and the differences. Isn't that, did I
Yeah, I
catch
think that's what,
everything? Did I miss
right.
anything?
No, I think we wanted to do a roundup. So when we
Yeah.
first started the Tech Tip Talks, I hadn't figured out the technology to record everything yet. So we want to review again, what is tech editing?
Yeah.
Why do you need a tech editor? Why is it important to your publication process? And what's the difference between tech editing and testing, how they can work together? And then, if you are a tech editor, how do you curate a great relationship with your clients? Just from our own experience, we'll just give you some of our ideas.
Yeah, just how we approach it, if it's
Totally
helpful
a
to
lot of
know.
our own opinions. Just the whole business of tech editing. So first off, tech editing, what is it? Tech editing is similar to copy editing in the sense that it is an editor who goes through every single punctuation mark, number, word, paragraph, line space in your pattern to make sure that it works, that it flows, that it makes sense, that it's correct and clear, with the goal that they are giving you a second set of eyes to help you to find any errors that might be remaining in your pattern so that when you publish your pattern, your knitters or your crocheters, if you're a crochet tech editor, end up with an excellent pattern that works and they don't run into a problem. Did I miss
And is
something?
easy to follow and is correct, and that's what, you're looking for.
Yes. So a tech editor is usually experienced in their craft. So they're an experienced knitter or crocheter. They maybe have a specialty. Maybe they love socks or they love shawls or garments, and they're really good at editing and finding, and they understand those kind of patterns and that construction. And now, Christine, you might argue with me on this, but generally speaking, they're good at math.
Yes, yes. And you do have to have at least a basic understanding of math to
But
do all of the figuring that has to be done.
the math for that craft, so it isn't necessarily that they're good at math, generally speaking, but they understand the math related to stitch counts and measurements and gauge.
I think not the biggest, but a piece of tech editing is like the math point is knowing what, like she said, what math and how it all relates to each other, how it all relates to the knitting pattern, how it
Mm-hmm.
relates to all the things you're checking and all the reasons why you have to check those things and why they have to be right. Just sort of having that kind of understanding of how all those things work together and what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do to check it really accurately, I think
It,
is just I don't even know what skill that is.
yeah, it's relational. So it's even
Yeah.
understanding. So, for instance, a line of pattern instruction may have the correct stitch counts, may the increase and decrease may end up with the right number, but maybe it doesn't work overall with that stitch patterning or with a multiple. So your
Mm-hmm.
tech editor will understand not only checking individual lines for math, but also the scope of the whole pattern and how everything fits together. And your tech editor, the reason why you want to hire a tech editor is because none of us can see our own mistakes. We may be able to go over a pattern 5 times before we publish it, and there would still be things we might not see or might miss.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from experience because
Yeah.
I ghostwrite some patterns, and I generally always miss something. I hire an editor to check my work. Do you agree with me, Christina, on this?
Absolutely. I mean, just think about anything that you create or
Mm-hmm.
write. Anything you
Right.
write. When you write a letter, write new papers, write
Mm-hmm.
articles, write blog posts, write your posts on social media. How many times have you posted something and then read it later? Like, oh my God, there's like 3 typos in this.
Right.
You know,
Or misspelled word with me.
and so think of all the things that have to be correct in a pattern
Mm-hmm.
and how,
Yes.
especially something that's not even if it's not a lot of sizes, there's a lot of things that have to be right. And there's a lot of things to check. And it's really easy to miss stuff. Sometimes there's even just like copy and paste errors.
Yeah,
So
that always happens to me.
someone looking at it with fresh eyes who's like detached also.
And hasn't seen it 500 times in the last
Yeah.
year.
Sometimes when you're looking at something so much, you don't see the mistakes anymore because they blend into the wall
You
paper,
don't
you know?
see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
So here's the other aspect of this is that remember that as a designer, your goal is to instill a level of trust with your knitters or your crocheters. So having an error-free pattern or almost 99% error-free is going to make those knitter and crocheters love your work and want to knit more of it or
Right.
crochet more of it.
So Edie says, I hire an editor every time, and 100% of the time they find at least one error, and I'm a tech editor. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Tech editors
That's the
who
same with
also
me.
design patterns hire tech editors.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You just
So here,
don't see things when you've been looking at it over and over and over and over, and it's your thing, you know?
so then our next thing is, well, some people will say, well, I'll just get the pattern tested. I don't need to pay a tech editor to find the errors in my pattern because I'm going to have it tested. In our opinion, now this is all our opinion, we believe that it should be tech edited before you send it to testing, mainly because a lot of testers work on a volunteer basis. I have my own opinions about that, which we won't get into today.
Mm,
But if you give your testers and you are trying to curate some projects for your pattern, or you're really trying to find out things related to fit or things related to sizing and make sure that they really work, you don't want to give your testers a pattern that has problems because then you might have to do multiple versions. They might get frustrated, they might quit. You want to make sure that your testers have the best material possible to work with.
I
So
agree. I
testing
agree.
is important to pattern design for a lot of our clients use testers, but you need to consider, hey, I want to give my testers the best material to work with so they're not dealing with stitch count errors. So,
I find too, so testing is when you knit the item. You're not
right,
checking it like on paper like we do, you're knitting it. And I think that that's a whole different way of experiencing the pattern.
it is.
So having it tech edited first is great because then, like you said, they have the most accurate version of this and hopefully they won't have a lot of issues with it. They will be able to help you with all the fit issues, little thingies that might be different when you're actually knitting something. but
Or
also they're
the thing
what?
that always happens to me when I'm tech editing, because when we tech edit, we don't knit it. We do it all up in
Right.
our head. And so what always happens to me is I forget where the yarn was. Like you say, break yarn and then start this row, pick up stitches from here. And sometimes I have to like draw a diagram because wait, the yarn's over there. That means, and sometimes I miss that, right?
Yeah,
Do
I'll
you
go in
too?
some no, I don't usually, but I tend to jump around. Like
Mhm.
I'll go and look at where in the pattern that is going to happen. And every time I see a place that starts and it didn't just leave off continuing knitting, I always go and look to find out what that's all. But I miss other stuff.
But sometimes testers can find things that a tech editor won't because they're actually experiencing the pattern with
Exactly.
their hands and yarn and needles.
Some
So it's a
instructions,
whole nother
even
thing.
tricky types of instructions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I sometimes will, like, I have needles and yarn right here on my desk. And if
Mm-hmm.
something is really tricky and it doesn't make sense while I'm reading it, it seems like what's happening here. Lots of times on the needles, it makes perfect sense. And that's why I think having a pattern that is so that not so correct, but that is right and that is easy to follow, it, the knitter should be able to just read and do and get the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think also testing, everybody's so personal, and lots of testers are really experienced knitters, and they can give you really good feedback on fit and about the instructions in your patterns. But they also might not notice all kinds of mistakes because they might know what you mean.
They might assume.
You know what I mean? Because I do
Yeah,
that. If I'm knitting something and there's like an error, but I get
I,
what she means,
I gloss over it
I'll just go.
as a
I don't even.
knitter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So although that's a little different where testers are trying to look out for those things, but um, I just think they're different jobs. I think they're different things.
And,
And they're
and,
knitting like one size, right? So then
right.
they're also not seeing the relationships between the sizes. You
Yes.
could have many testers in all different sizes, but they're not going to be seeing the relationships between the sizes,
Right.
you know?
So we honestly think, as tech editors, we think our profession is super important, but we also do uh believe that it is testing is super important also.
Mm.
So these two need to work in tandem. And you, as a designer, will have to decide what works best for your publication schedule and for what you need to accomplish. So this is what we think. Take it as you see fit for your product that you're producing. We think the two work together really well if tech editing comes first. So, what are some of the other things we wanted to talk about?
Um,
I know we had a
we
question.
we did get a question.
Do you want to
Um,
cover that now, or do you want to?
maybe we should just talk about what our goal is as tech editors. Like
Yeah,
how
let's
do
do
we
that.
approach it? What is our goal? What is the point?
So,
What kind of tech editors do we want to be? You know what I mean?
and and so we're going to address this even to maybe some of you who would like to or are interested in becoming a tech editor. What is your goal as a tech editor? What do we see our goal? And maybe some of it would resonate with you. My goal as a tech editor is to be the best support that I can be for my client, to help them suss out all the errors, find all the problems in their pattern, and then also to not give the information to them in a way that is going to frustrate them or discourage them. I understand as a perfectionist, I don't like to be corrected. So it's hard to receive corrections
Yeah.
from and to know that something's wrong with your pattern. So as a tech editor, I try to frame what I'm giving my clients as an encouragement, as suggestions, as a cheerleader, as, hey, maybe this will work. I'm always looking at things in a positive light to get my client to the end goal that they're ready to publish. And they're confident in their pattern and they know that they're going to get a good reception.
The way you communicate with your client is so much of the job.
Yes, it
It's
really
so much of
is.
it because, like you said, you can really misconstrue
It's hard.
some things.
It's hard to
It's
say, hey, this is wrong. You
yeah,
it
And it's like some things are wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some things are suggestions. And I think for me, there's two things that are what I'm doing this, right? Why I'm doing this. To support my client and their vision
Mm-hmm.
of what they want their pattern to be, what they want to communicate to the knitter, and how they want to do it. And to make sure that all those things that they want, they can get, and it'll be correct and easy to follow. So that's
Right.
my focus, and that's what I care about. And I also care about the knitter and making sure that the knitter will be happy with this pattern and be able to knit it and be happy. So like my
Exactly.
designer's vision and happy knitters is sort of what I try to, that's my focus. Do you know what I mean?
It's awesome. That's a
That's
great
my
way of
focus.
thinking about it, is that you're not only taking care of your client, but you're looking at the end goal of also from a perspective of a knitter going through this pattern to help the client.
Well, because I think that's the designer's goal, right?
Yes.
So it has to be a little bit of your goal. If the
Right.
designer's goal is to have happy knitters,
Mm-hmm.
that has to be, what you want for them, and you
So
want to help them do it the way they want to do it.
So then that helps when you're a tech editor to help you frame your queries or your comments or the things that you mark.
Right.
Is this really an error? Number one is the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I'm really always thinking about and always double check. Like, okay, is this my problem? Did I write down the wrong gauge or whatever?
Right.
And secondly, how can I put this in a way that doesn't sound snarky?
Yeah.
Because I can be snarky and I don't want to come across that way.
No.
Or how can I
Because
put
it isn't
this?
what you mean,
No, not at
right?
all.
It's not what you mean.
Mm-mm.
But sometimes I think you're just like taking notes and you write them all
Yes.
out and you write down all the
Yes.
notes and this. But then you have to think about the person getting this pattern back from you,
Right.
like all these markups and like la
And
la 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 la.
how do I approach my comment to them in a way that is going to say, hey, can you take a look at this again? Because I don't think this is right. There might be an error here, is sometimes how I put it. Um, I never try to address things like, I'm right, you're wrong, because that's not how it works as an
Well, and you
editor.
don't know.
Never.
So first of all, it's their pattern,
100%.
not your pattern. Second
Not my
thing is
pattern.
you might be wrong. You don't know.
Exactly.
If their math is off in a row and there doesn't add up, something doesn't work right. I always just throw right, this doesn't work.
Yes.
And explain why it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that I know how to
Mm-mm.
fix the row.
Because it may be all the way back up.
You don't even know where the
It
mistake
may
is.
we don't know where it is, and I sometimes don't even give suggestions on how to fix things because the designer, if I say, "Hey, take a look at this and this doesn't work," sometimes the designer comes up with a creative, genius, clever way to solve that problem. I didn't even cross my mind.
Well, and
I don't know what they're going to come up
I
with.
try not to offer suggestions on how something can be. If there's wording that's off, I
Hmm.
might suggest an alternate word to use if something's like awkward or doesn't work. Um, and I'll write something like blah 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 or you know. But as far as a mistake in the instructions, you don't know.
Mm-mm.
You don't know where that mistake is, and you don't know how they want to fix it. And I don't offer suggestions unless I'm asked about those things. We
Yeah.
got a comment.
Okay.
I have a question. I have a question if it's okay. I
Of
mostly design
course.
accessories, but I am designing my first garment. It's a raglan sweater. I don't know how to grade, and I will be going to a tech editor to help me grade. So first thing, is the tech editor doing the grading for you?
Mhm. My question is, does the tech editor also give us the amount of yarn needed for specific sizes? They should.
Well,
Yeah.
you can ask them.
Ask them to do it for you.
Ask them. I would find out ahead of time what they're
What
going to
they
be doing,
provide.
and ask them if what things you need done. Definitely be upfront about anything you aren't sure is like included. You
And
know.
this is across the board for all tech editing services. As a
Mm,
tech editor, you need to be very clear in your agreement with your client up front before you take the
right.
job. This is what I do. This is what I check for. This is what the service that I provide, and so that everything is clear in it can be in an email agreement,
Yeah.
that so the client knows exactly what they're paying for. And then that also helps you to be accountable to yourself for what the jobs that you need to do.
Well,
So
and
in
they know what
this,
they can expect, you know.
exactly. And with a service like grading, which is a specialized skill that a lot of tech editors do provide, you up front make sure you just ask all the questions. Say, hey, this is what I need. Do you provide this? Can you give me the yardage since you have you're working in the spreadsheet with all the measurements? If I give you the weight of the sample, can you give me yardage? Um, this should be in upfront what they provide for you, and you just have to communicate. Edie says in yarn amounts, I think it's better to say what you think it will be and let the TE confirm it. Yeah, and that totally can work too. If you've done the grading and let them check it for you. Excuse the typos. It's not a problem. My thumbs are big too if I'm working on a phone.
I get it lots of different ways. So I found that a lot of the clients I work with don't want me to double check that the
Yarn.
yardage on their patterns are correct. They
Do they
just want
use
me.
testers for that?
Yes, yes. A lot of the patterns I do, they don't finalize the yardage until after testing.
After testing kind of confirms it.
Right. And then they decide on their yardage. And they use, if someone wants me to check to find out what the yardage will be for each size, I'm asked specifically about that because
Mm-hmm.
I started asking if people want me to do that because I found that I was doing it and people didn't want me to do that.
Yeah.
Like it's
I
not
think it
something they want me to
depends.
check they want me to check that the yardage and meterage matches,
Yes.
but not find out what that yardage and meterage is in the first place. So I only do that unless someone specifically says they want me to do that.
I always look and make sure the yardage and the meterage are equivalents to
Mm,
rounded to whatever they're supposed to be rounded to.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I do that, but I don't figure out what they are supposed to
And
be
I
in the
always
first
make
place.
sure there isn't like there's a gradual
Yes,
increase with sizes, because
right,
sometimes I've made the mistake before where I didn't notice that there was a size that was way less than the sizes next to it. So yeah, there should be, that's another way to also look at it if you
right.
aren't looking for specific amounts, that they are what they're supposed to be.
Well, and that's
Um,
good to think about in everything on a pattern. To just, if something seems off,
mhm.
look at it,
Look at it again.
mention it. Why is that? That seems like that's not right. Like that, like this example you just gave about the yardage.
Right. So the other thing that we need to come back to here too is we wanted to talk about how you curate a great relationship with your clients. And I think this last question by Yessie Designs kind of alluded to it. There needs to be a good communication between client and tech editor. And sometimes that's hard to do over email. So uh, a lot of what I try to do when I'm setting up a job. So someone does an inquiry for me, or a client wants to start working with me. This is when I was taking new clients, which I'm not now, but we would have some communication about what their expectations are from why they're hiring me, what do they need me to, what service do they need provided, and then also from my end, I tell them this is what I do, this is what I excel at, this is what I want to do for you, and this has to happen in a way where there's no assumptions. That way, everything is clear up front in your relationship with your client, so that if something goes off later, you have it all in writing. Um, and it also really establishes a certain level of trust between you and the client. And even to some extent, it's made me appreciate my clients to the point where I feel like they're friends almost, because we have this kind of communication. So if you are a beginning tech editor, work hard to establish good communication with your
Mm.
clients so that everything is clear and there's nothing left to chance in your business relationship.
Yeah, be
What do you,
clear. And I
well,
know that, well, so I don't know. I think So for me, that was hard at first, right? Like
It is hard.
writing an email and saying specifically what I need you to get back to me about and tell me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm just not good at that. Being like, this is what I want from you, right? That's not easy for everybody. So
It's
now I'm
not.
getting better at,
Takes
let
some
me know,
practice.
you know, please let me know about X. Or like at the end of my estimate email, I will write, please respond to confirm, because lots of people don't respond and they assume that I think I'm good to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really want to start on that project until I've really heard from you that you really want me to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So now
Right.
I think it's really important to say what you need to know, and
Mm-hmm.
just ask for it so it's not confusing. And I have found that clients really do appreciate my estimate email with everything in it, that what I'm going
It's
to do,
detailed.
what I do for them. I don't use it for people that I've been working with for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have stopped wanting estimates from me altogether. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then, like you've been saying, at that point, those relationships are really established and the communication is
Mm-hmm.
already good, and there's nothing missing there, And you have to be available to your clients. It doesn't
Right.
mean that you have to be available all the time, and that as soon as you get an email, you have to answer it right away. I mean, people are reasonable, but you do need to
Mm-hmm.
be available and let them know when you are available
Right.
to be there.
And something that we got advice on up front, I think was really helpful when we were learning how to tech edit, is keep your promises. So if you say that you will have the edited file back to them on Tuesday by 5 p.m., whatever time zone, you got to hold yourself to that. Don't, in other words, keep your agreement with what you agree to do it, and at all costs. And I think that that was a real help for me because I was learning how to even run my own business at home and how to juggle family and life and working and technology and computer crashes. And I think that was a real help to me to hear that.
Well, and I mean, I agree with you, and you really do. You can't say, I'll have this back to you on the 10th and then not send it.
Yeah.
You do have to, because otherwise you're not trustworthy, right? You're not reliable. You need to be reliable. In any
Yep.
job that you do, you need to
And
be reliable.
and if
But
I'm
I think especially in a job when you're not ever seeing the person,
mhm,
you need to be good on what you say that you're
exactly.
going to do, because it's the only contact, right? You need to make good on what you say you're going to do. But that doesn't mean, like, this is kind of goes to one of the questions we got, but that doesn't mean that, you know, shit happens, right? Like,
That's
things
true.
happen in life that you cannot control. You
Yep.
might get, like, one time I was really sick. I was very, 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 very sick. It was a couple of years ago. And like, I couldn't. And I wrote to the clients I had due, I think it was just one, like in the next day or two. And I was like, I can't even do this.
Hmm.
And
It
what,
happens.
so I pushed it till like a couple days till I was better, and she was okay with it. But I do always say, I may not be able to get this to you by X
Hmm.
because of X.
Yeah. In other words, but you clearly communicate that.
Yes, I am sorry. It's not how I like to work. Please let me
Hmm.
know if that it will work for you. If it will not work for you, I will find another, like, something. I don't know. Like, I haven't had to, right? But maybe I would, I don't know.
So
Maybe I
this
would just, I don't know,
that brings in a whole nother thing, Christina, is if you're a beginning tech editor, start to curate relationships with other
with
tech
other tech
editors.
editors.
Because we are not lone wolves. It's just not going to happen. We're working in a community, we're not competing against each other. If you curate friendships and relationships and working relationships with other tech editors, then if something happens, you have people that you can rely on to help you. And you can also, when you have too much work, you can send some work some other people's way. So this that totally is a situation like where you're sick or your kid is sick
Or something
or an
horrible happens. I
emergency
mean,
happens,
yeah.
then you have a way, you have like some backup. And this is just part of running a business
And your
too.
clients, and let it be their choice. Like, your clients aren't
Hmm.
always going to want to go to someone else. Sometimes they're
That's
able to
true.
wait, and they're happy to wait, and they want you to feel better.
Yep.
So it's not always the end of the world. Some things are out of your control, like in any job, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's the last thing that I think we need to say about being a tech editor. Run it like a business. It's not a hobby. If you
No.
really are working as a tech editor, you need to be serious about it, and it's your profession, and you go to work in the morning on the days that you plan to edit. And that actually gives you a lot of vim and vigor if you understand my meaning, if you approach it as, hey, this is my work, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm helping others. Um, don't take it as, don't do it in a way that's kind of like a side thing, because then that won't help you in your relationship with your clients.
That will make it harder too to stand by
It
what you
will.
say.
And it'll make it harder when there's problems in a pattern and you gotta find it and it's hard work and because there is that side of editing where it's like, my brain's got to wrap around this today.
It is very like intense, deep
It
work.
is. It is hard brain work.
Yeah,
We have a question. Yesy Design says, to what size should a sweater be graded? I want to send you, we did a whole episode on sizing.
we did.
So you can either go to my IGTV, which is in my profile, or you can go to my YouTube channel, which is in my bio. There's a link to the
The link is
videos.
there in my bio too.
So go and watch that whole episode because I think we talked for like 45 minutes about sizing, and I think that'll be a help to
Yeah, I
you.
think it'll be more helpful because we talk about the whys and
The
everything, and
whys
I don't
and
think we have
size
time to do that
inclusive.
right again.
What are the average time it takes to edit a pattern? It depends.
Oh, so much depends.
There's a huge range. I don't think there is an average. When
There
we were
can't be an
for
average because every single,
no,
so I mean, for
mm-mm.
a sweater pattern, you're saying like for a sweat, I mean, you have to put your patterns in compartments in the first place, right? You know,
Correct.
but
Yes.
anything that you add to a pattern is going to increase how long it takes to edit it. So if you have a shawl that is garter stitch, it won't take as long as a shawl that is garter stitch and lace and cables. Anything you add. If you have a hat, it's not going to take as long to edit as a hat that has many cables in it or has
Unless
a funky
it's
decrease situation.
5 sizes with
Well, that was what I was going to say next.
modification
Any
options.
sizing that you add to any pattern, if your sock and your hat are in one size, it's not going to take as long to edit as one that's in 4 sizes. If your sweater is in 2 sizes, it's going to take less time to edit than one that's in 11 sizes.
With
Anything you
yeah,
add is
exactly.
going to add time.
Because every word, every number has to be gone over. It has to be confirmed
Yeah.
and cross-checked with the other stuff in the pattern. So length of the pattern, how many pages, how many words generally will give you an idea how much time it's going to take. Although I will say this is that I have done an estimate on a pattern that was like a page and a half, and it ended up taking like 3, 4 hours because there were multiple like cascading errors. Even though it wasn't a complex pattern, there was things that we had to go back and forth a lot to get things fixed to
Well, and
make it
that
work.
happens too. And that's why I think it's really good to
Hmm.
take a look. Also, in our bios, we have the link to the checklist you can use to check your
Yes.
pattern before you send it to your editor, because lots of times there will be a pattern I'll get that is not a complicated design,
Hmm.
but because of
There's a lot of
so
little
many
things.
errors, so
Yeah.
many mistakes, it takes a longer time to edit. And you really
Yes.
don't know that. I mean, estimating is really hard for me
It's
because
hard for me too.
you don't know how long something's going to take until you get in it. You really don't know.
And you can make an estimate. For a lot of times, if you're a tech editor, what I did when I was first starting was I would keep track of how long patterns would take me for a particular client.
Right.
And then for that client, I would kind of use some math to figure out how to give them a better estimate because their patterns generally would take so much time per
Or you
page or
you
per
and you become
number.
accustomed to the kind of writing they do and the kind of things you need to look
Yes.
out for, so you have an idea of how long it might take you to do something.
So
Um,
generally speaking, patterns can take, an accessory pattern might take half an hour to 2.5 hours, depending on the complexity.
or three and
Garment,
a half hours if it's some kind of shawl with all kinds of things going on and like 45 charts. And I mean,
yeah, and you got to check the written against the chart. That can
mm,
take an hour. per chart.
Yeah.
So garment patterns, generally speaking, take between, I think the least amount of time for me is like an hour and a half. If I'm very familiar with the designer's construction, I already have a spreadsheet set up for them. But generally between 2 to 4 hours for a garment, I think. Am I about right?
At least
At
five,
least. It
five.
can be longer. If you have 22 sizes, like it goes from baby to adult, it can take quite a bit of time.
And it depends on how much work is being, that's like editing time, but it depends on how
Mm-hmm.
much work is being done that's not the editing. If
Right.
you're doing a lot of consulting with the designer about this pattern,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to
It's going to add
be
time.
billed also.
Yeah.
Um,
So, and this is the other thing that
and that's
I
another
always,
thing to be upfront about and be
yes,
really clear about.
exactly. Be very clear.
Really upfront and clear about.
So, what I usually do is I've gotten into the habit in the last few years to, after every editing pass, like every time I go through the pattern and I send them back for corrections, I'll say, this is how much time this took me so that it's not a surprise to them when they get the invoice.
Yeah, and those when you send your pattern back to a check editor and they have to check it again, if it takes longer than 10 or 15 minutes to check it, that's going to be billed too, usually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I bill to do anything that takes longer than 15 minutes. That's a
Yeah.
proof.
Yeah.
So not all the time is that proof check going to be like not billed. And that needs to be made clear. And that's why,
Yeah.
that should, if you're unsure about those things and your tech editor hasn't told you about
Mm-hmm.
what's included in their estimate as far as
What
like
time's being
everything,
charged? Mm-hmm.
what time's being charged, what's included,
Yeah.
find out.
SS Nitz
Because
Jones
assuming
said,
things is always going to cause trouble somewhere.
yeah, don't assume. Make
Mm,
sure you just communicate. She
yeah.
says that crochet charts take a long time if you're asking for that service. Yeah, because that's a whole nother animal. Crochet charts are almost like works of art. They're not in a grid. They like go off each other. And so, yeah, absolutely can take quite a bit more time. So that kind of segues into the question that we got that we'd like to answer. Knit Attitude is here, so I'd like to answer your question that you sent. She said, I'm curious to know what is the average margin of error for a tech editor, as well as how many rounds of back and forth with the designer is acceptable. And then the third part of the question is, if there's a big mistake that isn't caught or that you may have missed, what happens then? Yay, thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to answer this question. I think this is super important for us to address as tech editors. First part of the question, what is the average margin of error for a tech editor? What do you think? Is there?
I don't, I don't know because I only know myself. I only know the
Mm-hmm.
mistakes that I make. I only know how often it happens for me. I only know. That's all I know. Um,
I will say that I make mistakes. I miss
I make
things.
mistakes. I miss things. Yes.
We are not perfect. We're human like everybody else.
Right.
The goal as a tech editor is to get my misses as close to zero as possible.
Absolutely.
Um,
That's always the goal is to not miss things.
Not miss anything.
Yeah.
That's like a dream. I didn't miss anything. But there are some things where maybe it's not so possible for us to see as a tech editor. That it would be something that would be more easily found in testing. The average margin for error should be as close to zero as possible. And the way that you get there as a tech editor is through experience, checklists, and then when you do miss something, what do you do with that? As when I was learning how to tech edit, every time I missed something, instead of beating myself up, I would just add it to my checklist
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that I checked it on every pattern after then and I never missed it from then on. And that's how you grow as a tech editor. That's how you get better. So you can use one of our checklists. I think we have a checklist that designers can use, but you can use that also as a tech editor. So the goal is as little as possible. And I started to ask myself if I consistently missed, like for instance, a multiple at the cuff, like 1 by 1 is a multiple of 2. Oh, I'm missing that these stitches have to be even at the end of the sleeve. Why do I keep missing that? Do I not have, I should have a system in place that helps me to check that. So I started to take better notes on my spreadsheet, and it helped me to improve as a tech editor. So from a tech editor's standpoint, we want to get the average down to 0, but it also means putting in the work to improve and learn from your mistakes.
A lot of the misses that get made for me, I find, it kind of leads into the next part of her question. She asks,
yes,
how many back and forth
rounds back and forth,
of corrections is acceptable. So she says acceptable or
yeah, is
whatever.
acceptable.
And I have found lots of times something gets missed. It's because the document keeps changing.
Yeah.
So if there's a say there's a chart that wasn't created in the beginning, and it's added later, and say it gets formatted again or copied and pasted, and it's different. So 9 times out of 10, when your tech editor gets your copy back from them that they've edited and you've added your corrections and made your corrections, they're going to check first for the things that were wrong, and they're going to
on
check
the last
to see if
version,
and they're going to check to see if you've corrected them.
right?
But what I find is lots of designers will make lots of changes, and I don't know they've done that. So it's a good idea, just speaking to designers, if you are going to make changes on your pattern that you send back in the corrected copy that are not things that were marked as wrong or that needed to be changed, let them know. Like, I also made some changes in this paragraph, or I also
Different
made some
color
changes. I decided
font.
to have this sweater, work to a different length in this part, or I wanted to change the way I had written the instructions in the end. Or tell them, let them know that those things you also addressed, because they won't know that you've addressed them. And I don't know that it's not really fair, I feel like, to the designer for me to basically re-edit the whole pattern every time,
Right.
just as a matter of course.
Right.
If they've not changed anything except the things that we talked about, then I know what to look for. But lots of times when you're looking over the corrections, you might see something that you didn't notice before.
Right.
Sometimes a style issue,
Right.
like a missing period or a space that wasn't supposed to be there. And so for me, my policy is, about backs and forths, right? I have experienced any number of back and forth correction copies.
Yeah.
And I just do it until it's right.
Do it until it's done.
I just do it until it's right. I'll go back and forth as long as we need to go back and forth until it's correct.
Me
and
too.
sometimes that seems frustrating because sometimes I'll be correcting the same exact things over and over again. But sometimes, like I was saying, patterns will change in that process.
And your editor
Sometimes patterns change in that process.
Your editor can compare documents and look for things that have changed, but that takes time.
Yeah.
So it's better if you do help your editor by, like, what I like to do if I'm sending something to my editor and I've made the change, but they didn't know that I made the change, is I'll change the font color and I'll change it to a completely different, like blue or purple.
And you can say the highlighted things are where I made changes.
Highlighted things are where I made other changes that you didn't mark.
Right.
And then that reduces the back and forth. And that also reduces the amount of things that they might not see because
And
you
it
made
reduces
changes.
the amount of money you're paying for your pattern to be tech edited.
That's it, right there.
So I go back and forth as many times as I have to go back and forth
Me
until
too.
the corrections are all caught and it's all good.
I'm in it till it is, they are satisfied and done. I will do 5 proofs if I need to, just to make sure everything got looked over again. And different editors work in a different way. So sometimes designers like to send, hey, can you look at just this section? And I want to make sure this is right before I do the chart, which works for me. I have had to do that before. And that kind of back and forth is great, because then you make sure that one section is correct before it leads into the next one, especially if it's based on the previous one. Do you edit on screen only, or do you print and edit from hard copy? I find it helps to look at the pattern in both formats. I'm with you there.
I'm sort of
both.
I'm so old.
Do you do paper only?
I don't do paper only.
No, I
If
don't
it
either.
is something that's, you know, a page and a half and it's really a simple thing,
Hmm.
I might just sit at the computer and just do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Or I
but
might just print it and take
sometimes
it outside to my patio and edit.
I do that too. I'll print it and take it outside. And I kind of wish I could take sweaters outside and spend more
Hmm.
time doing that. But I need my computer for sweaters and things in multiple sizes. But I do print it almost all the time.
I do too.
I've got a chart over here it's not even, okay, so this is not even a complicated chart, okay?
If I'm
It's,
checking charts, it's been
it's,
printed.
this chart is so easy. It's not even hard. But for some reason, I need to check it, and there were issues with it that don't have to do with comparing written to the chart. Like, that's not the issue.
Hmm.
The chart has like this one tricky spot. It has to work. I
Yep.
printed and like taped it together. Like,
Yes, that's what
okay.
I do. That's
Um,
exactly what I do. I'll like fold it up and get out my scotch tape and
and
make
like
sure
that
the
is not even
repeats
that's
follow.
not even a complicated chart. That's what I'm saying.
It's,
It really depends
yes.
on the thing. It depends on what the issues are. It depends. But most things, yeah, I print them. Most things I print them. I'm like addicted to paper and pencil. I like to have my pencils,
I
and I
keep my
like to,
recycler in business.
I got all my scrap paper from crap patterns that got redone. Like,
I have my special pencils I gotta use.
yeah,
I like to check charts on
yeah,
paper, says Hannah. It's,
I have to. Oh, if it's a
yeah.
chart, sometimes with a chart, like if there's just one and it's small, I'll be like, oh, come on, Christina, do not waste paper.
Oh,
Just do
nothing
it.
wrong with that.
And I'll
Yep.
print one of them. So I'll usually print the written and follow the chart on the computer, but it's not really my favorite way to do it.
We got fans for paper here. She
Oh,
says, on
good.
paper, it's helpful to use a ruler to keep your eye from jumping over goose. I have special
I
rulers
like
that
to
I
check
use for
charts on
checking
paper. All
charts.
the way paper obsessed. I love it. I gotta have my paper and
Analog,
pencil. So the
I'm
only
with
things
you.
I tend to do on the computer are things that, like she was asking before, like edits that
Yeah.
take a half an hour,
Well,
20 minutes. Those are the
when I'm
things I do on the computer, you know?
when I'm done with paper, then I go to the computer and I usually make things bigger, and that helps me sometimes to see things when
Oh,
I've
I
gone
can't do
from
that. That
paper.
drives me crazy.
Does it?
Oh,
Oh,
you mean
see,
like
we
the
all work.
text? Make the text
Yeah,
bigger? Oh,
I
no, that drives me nuts. I can't
amplify
do
the
that.
text, and
Ah,
that sometimes
no.
helps me to see things.
But
We all work differently.
I don't. I've just recently started doing something a little. Well, no, it's like a sometimes thing. I usually do it all on paper and then put it on the computer. But
Hmm.
sometimes I do
Sometimes I go
both.
as I'm doing it
Yeah, sometimes as I'm doing it,
in
I'll
tandem.
put my notes on the computer at the same time. And I'll
Well,
just write on my CPDF, my
CPDF.
paper.
Yep.
So sometimes I
So
do that.
we have one more part to this question to answer,
Yes.
and we're almost out of time, and I want to make
Yes.
sure we get everything
Yeah,
in.
we got to answer that.
If there's a big mistake that isn't caught or that you may have missed, what happens then?
Okay. So if an error is found after publication and it's my error, okay, so
Yes,
that sucks, right? It sucks
it
for
sucks
everybody.
bad.
And
It
I will
happens.
do whatever you need me to do. I
I will
will
bend
do
over
what
backwards.
I will do whatever you need me to do to help
Yep,
you fix it, to make it right, whatever time it's going to take me, like on me, right?
yep,
I
on
will
me
do
all the way.
whatever I have to do to help you get it right and to help you with whatever you need to get that back all set,
Hmm.
absolutely. And I mean,
And
it stinks. Nobody wants that, but like it
nobody
happens.
wants that. And that's part of my
It
agreement with
happens.
my client. It's a paragraph in there. If you find a mistake after
Hmm.
you publish that I missed, I will do whatever it takes to make
Yep.
sure you're 100% satisfied. Because
Yeah, me
that is
too.
what they're paying you for. They're paying you to find all the errors. So if you
Hmm.
miss a big one,
That's on you.
now I have
And then,
had
like
some,
Sarah said, write it
yeah,
down. Write down what the
mm-hmm,
mistake was. Make sure you're
write it
looking for
down
it.
and make
And maybe
sure,
make sure you're looking for it with that client, right? Like, I bet you'll never
yes.
make that same mistake with that person again.
And you have to eat those hours if it takes
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
As a
It's on
tech
you.
editor,
Well,
it's
that's how
on
I do it.
you.
Okay. So that's how I do it. It's on me if I make a mistake that's found after you've published it.
That's part of my agreement with my client is I'm
Me
going to
too.
find the mistakes.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers all your questions,
I
Nadatu.
hope so. Like,
Please
I kind of
send
got down a
us,
rabbit trail there with the paper question.
totally fine. Send us a note if you have more questions. We really enjoy hearing what you guys are interested in knowing about. Goody Two Sticks says, thanks so much for these tech tip talks, so valuable and helpful. We'll be watching for you when you start up again. So like we said at the beginning, we're going to take a break for August, for summer, take a little summer break. We'll be back in September. We do have a designer checklist, the things that you can check for in your patterns before you send it to your editor to reduce the back and forth, maybe to find a few things, to reduce the tech editing time, possibly. And that's in the link in my bio. We are also
It's in my
working
bio too.
on, awesome. And we are also working on putting all these tech tip talks and a lot of other information that we've compiled over the years of our experience into a downloadable product for you guys, because we would want to read it as tech
Yeah.
editors. We would want to print it out on paper and stick it next to our knitting chair and read it at. So we are putting this together into a form that you guys can have, and that will come soon. So I hope you all have a fantastic August. Do you have something else for us, Christine, or is this,
No.
are we good?
Thanks to you guys. Thanks for
Thank you
being
very
here with
much
us.
for being
It's
here
awesome.
today. We love helping you guys out, and we hope you have a fantastic end to your summer.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in September.
Stay cool.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.